It's so weird that this is considered a hot take nowadays, but I'm a firm believer that most modern video games just kind of simply aren't good anymore. Now, I know that's doing a whole lot of generalizing in one sentence about video games, but the gaming industry is kind of in a downward spiral right now, and everything kind of sucks. How's it going, guys? Tristan here, with a video about a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a while, but I've been putting off because I think it can be a slightly controversial take, especially when I call out some people's favorite games. This video isn't about all games either. There are still a number of modern video games releasing that are continuing to provide outstanding value and are essentially works of art at this point. Games like Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 was great. Very underrated, Expedition 33. There's a ton of them now. Now there's a list of reasons why I think that video games suck nowadays, and I could likely go on about it for hours, bringing more and more valid points to the table. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. And instead, I've broken down my main points into 3 different topics I want to touch on briefly, as well as a couple companies I personally won't be supporting anytime soon, and why I recommend you do the same. Now, it's no secret that most modern video games have essentially turned into a hellscape of monetization designed to drain as much profit out of you as possible. Between constant updates to games that add more and more microtransactions under the guise of devs adding quote-unquote more content in the form of skins and cosmetics, subscription services to access games that end up costing you more than the game itself over time, and by the end of it, you own nothing, by the way. And the continued rise of the cost of games and game consoles, it's become quite clear that the industry is shifting into a direction nobody's asking for besides investors. Companies don't want you to own anything anymore. Hell, if you've seen the recent news, Sony's now offering a service where you can rent a PS5 directly through them. Not rent to own, not financing, rent. So when it's all said and done, you have nothing after paying all of that money. Then there's the fact that dark patterns have become more prevalent than ever in video games. If you don't know what dark patterns are, to keep things brief, they are essentially a way that the UI of a game or a website is designed to trick you into spending money. They're especially prevalent in games more tailored towards a younger audience. One of the most common ways they're used is by playing into your fear of missing out and giving a false sense of urgency. The fear of missing out is a major factor in today's capitalist landscape, especially in video games. Limited time items and limited time deals on said items create this sense of urgency and make you feel like you have to buy them right then and there, otherwise you'll miss out. There are also instances of games using guilt trips and using the UI to talk or trick you into spending your money. Game prices are beginning to rise even more, with the base prices for some main titles being as high as $80 without really offering much more value than anything else released in recent time, besides being exclusive and new. Video game console prices also keep going up due to hardware prices skyrocketing recently with so many data centers popping up, especially here in the US. Then you look at the Switch 2 and its absurd price for a console that is just reaching the quality the Xbox One X was able to achieve 9 years ago in 2017, and the PS4 Pro was able to provide back in 2016, 10 years ago. Over time, shouldn't the cost of hardware be going down if the architecture of it doesn't change at all? You're paying a premium price for quality that isn't worth it anymore, in my opinion. Granted, the Switch is handheld, but we'll touch on that later. Then you have the subscription services like Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus that continue to increase in price. Game Pass used to include the entire catalog of games at one point for like $10, and now if you want to use it, you're paying damn near half the cost of a single game itself each month for the ultimate version of it. And PlayStation Plus isn't really all that far behind, all just to end up not owning anything in the first place. Then there's the whole argument of owning a game versus purchasing a license and having the right to access games, which isn't really much of an argument between people as much as it is game devs, publishers, and CEOs of companies pulling scummy practices and screwing people out of the things that they spent their money on. When there are clear alternatives, which I will touch on later, as you can probably tell, I'm pretty passionate about this. But there is a common saying going around because of this: you'll own nothing and be happy. Not only are these companies disrespecting your money, but they're also disrespecting your time. A lot of the most popular live service games out there now are designed to trap you into spending as much time as you possibly can in the hopes that you will eventually buy something. These tactics also play into your FOMO, as I spoke about before, in the form of time-gated items and limited time rewards. The Battle Pass system is a prime example of this, I will admit. A lot of the time, from what I can tell, the Battle Pass in most games typically has pretty good value as long as it's a game that you're actually going to play regularly. And if you consider if you even want primarily cosmetic items in the game that you're paying for in the first place. That combined with seasonal content that typically gets removed from the game after a certain amount of time, it makes it really hard for you to feel comfortable to just take a break from playing the game. Whether that be you play a different game or touch grass and be in the real world. Every single one of these systems is made to do one thing: keep you engaged in their game. Most of the time, as I mentioned before, it's under the guise of new content, when in reality, they aren't adding anything. They're adding cosmetics for your character most of the time. A lot of the times, these updates will add maybe a single new weapon or a couple of maps or a map overhaul or something of that nature. But a lot of the times, the gameplay doesn't change. Now, here's another hot topic: skill-based matchmaking. Skill-based matchmaking is another way that these games are designed to trap you. At some point, game devs discover that the best way to keep you playing is to give you an easy game or two. And then they'll match you with somebody at your skill level, and then if you win that match, you'll go up against someone who is much higher skill level. And we all know that you can't end on a loss, so you keep playing until you win again and are satisfied. But if you have too good of a time, you'll want to keep that streak up and play even more. And then if you have way too much fun after that, you'll get bored and you'll stop playing. It has created this horrible cycle of manipulating you that is hard to even notice if you're not careful. I used to go by a rule when it comes to placing value on games and the amount of time I put into them. You've probably heard of the $1 an hour rule. If not, it's essentially for every dollar you spend on a game, realistically, you should get that amount of hours out of it. So if you spend $60 in a game, I feel you should be able to get roughly 60 hours without stretching yourself thin and having a bad time. Obviously, some games are the exception one way or another. Games like Minecraft or any other open-ended game similar, you can easily find hours and hours of enjoyment without really getting bored, and you bought it one time. Then there's the other side of things where you could purchase a very story-driven game that is more like a modern-day work of art for $60 and only get about 30 hours out of it and still feel worth it depending on the experience. This rule is not a hard rule, and it really all comes down to how you play games and where you put value in the games that you play. And truthfully, that is not something that I can do for each person, as putting value on a piece of media is so subjective in the first place, especially when it comes to spending time consuming the media. Now, when I say old games, I don't just mean retro games from the 90s. At this point in time, as much as it pains me to say, Skyrim is an old game. I would also argue that games like Minecraft and Terraria are old games, even despite being updated as often as they are. Fortnite came out in 2017, and it will be 10 years old next year. Skyrim and Terraria turned 15 this year. Minecraft turns 17 this year. The Witcher 3 will be 11 this year, and just think, Red Dead Redemption 2 and Monster Hunter World will both turn 8 years old this year. All of these fantastic games are getting older and older, yet they are some of the most talked about, most played, and often some of the most renowned games that are out there. A lot of these games that I mentioned, you pay for one time and you can get so much playtime and value out of them for almost no money, especially now. Most of these titles can be gotten on sale for dirt cheap. I started playing Minecraft back in beta 1.7.2. I want to say that my father bought it for me and it was $10 maybe, and I have not had to purchase it again. I have purchased it again in other versions like Bedrock on the Xbox 360 and Xbox One. Just like with Skyrim, I've purchased Skyrim on basically every console I own, but I buy them one time for the most part, and I can get as much playtime and constant or consistent updates. Then comes the world of retro gaming. I've been a huge proponent of buying physical media, and more notably buying physical copies of video games, especially in a world where companies are fighting more and more to take away your right to own the things that you pay for. Here recently, I've been on the journey of collecting Game Boy and DS games. I've been doing this mostly for nostalgia purposes, but it has also been fun to try to find them locally on Marketplace, at flea markets, and good deals on online auctions here and there. In doing this, I've been slowly building up a very nice collection of handhelds and games that I own. They're not online, they're not on a server anywhere, they are physical copies of the games that I own and want to play. And most importantly, they can't be taken away from me. I can't have some company decide that they don't like that I'm playing it on some modded console and stop me from playing it. Plus, it just makes the shelf look really cool when I can display all of them. Now, I can't go through this video and speak on retro gaming without talking about sailing the seas online. At this point, it's no secret that piracy is making a major comeback in almost every form of media. While I will not show you or tell you how to do this, just know there are plenty of tutorials and videos on how to load up a modded 3DS with essentially every game to ever exist on the console itself, any console prior to it, and even some modern games. The same goes for the PS Vita, and now even the Switch has become more and more popular to mod as the Switch 2 comes out, although the risks are much higher with the Switch as it is still a supported console. Don't even get me started on retro-inspired custom handheld, as there's this whole rabbit hole that I can go down with that, but for the sake of time, just know, at some point, I will have an eye on Thor. Even if you don't want to do all the modding and work yourself on a handheld console for the simple fact that you don't want to risk damaging anything, it's all the same, if not even more accessible on your PC, and now even your phone. There are a host of different emulators that you can use and plenty of different ROMs that you can own and play. Modding games is another way to get an insane amount of replayability and just more time out of your games. Skyrim, Minecraft, and Terraria have enough fan-made content alone that you can play just those 3 games for probably hundreds and maybe even thousands of hours more and still find new stuff to do. Pokemon ROM hacks have gotten even more and more crazy over the years, with there even being a couple Pokemon-based MMOs. By the way, if you're looking for an online Pokemon experience with a large player base, I highly recommend checking out PokeMMO. It's one of my favorite ways to get my Pokemon fix nowadays. At the end of the day, the thing that seems to be the most notable to me when comparing older games to modern games has to be the passion put into them. It seems like just about every game that comes out these days is made to please shareholders and CEOs first and the consumer second. Older games just feel like there was a lot more care put into them between art direction, music, composition, story, and lore building, and even just the way that they were announced and information was shared on them. Games used to come out primarily finished and polished, even if it had a few bugs here and there. Now it's like they have an initial release or a pre-order bonus to play early just to get some bug testing out of the way before it releases normally. I also feel like there's no mystery to games anymore. Nowadays, trailers show basically everything new, and then there's a 1,000-word blog post that lays out all of the changes and what's being added or removed from games and updates. I know it's intended to build hype around these things, but all of this hype usually just ends up being a letdown anyway, because we expect more out of these companies that have been making games for decades at this point and seem to learn nothing. All of that said, throughout this entire video, I've been holding back on some of my main takes on a lot of these game companies and how I really feel about them. But it's time I tell you the few companies that I will no longer support and have not been supporting them for a while. I can no longer support companies that continuously make decisions that are so anti-consumer, and I hate the way this sounds, but so anti-gamer, that it's sickening. The first and probably one of the most obvious ones is Ubisoft. Ubisoft used to make some fantastic games. Who knows, they still might, but I will never personally buy another new Ubisoft game unless something changed. Don't get me wrong. I love the early Assassin's Creed games, all the way up to, honestly, Unity. Unity was very underrated. I highly recommend playing Unity if you can get it used and a physical copy of it somewhere. The Far Cry games are great. They were great up until, I want to say, at least 4. I enjoyed 5, but I know a lot of people didn't. And I even enjoyed playing the Ghost Recon games. Wildlands was fantastic. However, since they pulled the stunt that they did with the Crew, I won't be purchasing another game from them in a way that involves giving them money directly. I will be thrifting most of my games or getting a key that was already purchased through somebody else and getting a really good deal. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, back in 2024, they decided to end of life the Crew and shut down the game entirely. That isn't the issue though. I understand from a business standpoint, eventually it becomes unviable money-wise to continue supporting a game that produces basically no revenue anymore. However, I think it is still the responsibility of the company to provide the community that still plays that game a way to continue to play it. Instead of doing this, Ubisoft decided to start revoking people's license to the game, not providing a refund of some form while doing so, while also around the same time, the CEO of Ubisoft made a statement that consumers needed to start feeling comfortable not owning their game. After all of this happened, Ubisoft eventually came out and said that they were committing to creating some form of offline playability for the other Crew games, but they could have just as easily have done the same thing for the first Crew, or even done something a lot of games do and leave that up to the community. There are a multitude of different games that provide the community and players a way to run their own servers of some form or self-host in some way. The first one that comes to my mind is Battlefield. If you look back at, say, Battlefield 3 or 4, they still have community-ran servers to play on if you still wanted to. The next company is one that I could easily get the most hate for calling them out like this, but it's Nintendo. Nintendo has consistently disappointed me as a consumer and as a fan of most of their IPs. Pokemon is their bread and butter, yet they haven't taken a single step to be innovative in the slightest with their game. Not only that, but they fear any sort of competition that even comes close to their sphere of tameable monsters, especially with the whole Power lawsuit going on. Then there's the pricing for everything that is just outrageous. As I mentioned before, the Switch 2 is finally caught up with the graphic capability of consoles from 10 years ago. Isn't that fantastic? I do understand it is a bit different because it is a handheld. But even then, locking every game on the original Switch to 30 frames seems absurd to me for the time it was released. Not only that, but being the first company to charge $80 for a game and essentially greenlight the whole industry to follow suit really put a sour taste in my mouth, considering it was for games that just really weren't worth it in the slightest. Plus, there's the whole game key thing and charging extra for physical cartridges, and some of them don't even have the game on it, is ridiculous. I know this whole Nintendo section is coming off as a small rant, but as a lover of the old Nintendo, new Nintendo is so greedy, lazy, and as I stated before, just disappointing. Lastly, we have Epic Games, or more notably Tim Sweeney, who is the CEO of Epic Games. This one is a little more short-spoken than the Nintendo one, as this is a lot more recent. And there's a pretty major attack on Steam and Valve recently as a whole, simply because they're too good at what they do. Tim Sweeney, as well as a couple of other companies, have essentially been making statements that Steam is a monopoly and make too much money. The problem is that these companies want more market share, yet refuse to be nearly as pro-consumer as Valve and Steam are. Tim has also recently urged that Steam should get rid of their tag on games with AI used in the development of the game, and that it makes no sense because it it will soon be used in all future game development. While I understand what he's saying, I think it's very pro-consumer to let everybody know if AI was used in their game and let people know they want to support that game. The problem is he's been so focused on what his main competitor is doing without innovating his own online storefront to provide more value for their customers and basically anybody to even want to use Epic Game Store in the first place. The main thing all of these companies have in common is that they are all pursuing some type of attack on the gaming industry to extract more money out of customers. Between the lawsuits going on, Nintendo going after emulation and ROM sites designed for retaining gaming history, and these companies just being outright scummy and doing things to fill their pockets rather than retain customers, it has become quite clear who cares in the industry anymore. That's all I really have to say today without dragging on too much. I hope I got most of my points across without rambling all that much. If you've enjoyed the video and want to see more, feel free to subscribe and like the video. Thank you for watching. I have a lot more topics similar to this that I would like to talk about and do research on. And I do have a couple more videos in the works. Thank you guys so much for the support on the videos recently. It means the world to me. But I hope you guys have a great day. Take care. Adios.